Hello, hello. I think we're all working. No technical glitches like last time. So hi, thanks for joining me again for another live at lunch. And even if you're watching the playback, thanks for jumping on. I love all of the support. I get lots of support from all of you guys that watch my videos, so I really appreciate it. I hope it's Friday, so I hope you've had a chance to go and grab a little bit of a lunch and find a cool little spot to kind of chat with me today about some self-help and moving forward a little bit. We have just crazy, crazy heat here in Wisconsin right now. I know many of you are in Wisconsin as well, but many of you are across the country. I know I talked to many of you who are all over the country, and I know that we're all kind of experiencing this massive heat wave, but rest assured that even frozen tundra Wisconsin, we are also experiencing like 110 heat index today. So we definitely get our fair share of the heat as well. So I hope that you're staying cool and have a chance to just chat with me a little bit, even if you're watching the playback. Like I said, thanks for jumping on and join the conversation. If you have questions, comments, stories, experiences, anything you want to share or chat about as I'm going through the video, feel free to just drop them in the comments. I'll kind of be watching them over here on the side as we're going through, but even in the playback, I'll be paying attention. But even say hi, even if you don't have anything to share, you just want to say hi, let me know where you're watching from today too, because like I said, I love hearing from you all over the country. So um, quick little news update before we get into today's topic. If any of you have watched the last couple of videos that I have, there's two of my most recent videos. I talk about my TEDx auditioning to give a TED Talk. So I have an update on that. So 2 videos ago is my actual audition. We recorded the audition. It is titled TEDx Oshkosh Audition. It is the link between mental illness and mass incarceration in America. So if you haven't watched that, definitely take a minute and give it a watch and a share if it resonated with you at all. And then my last video was just an update letting everybody know that I should find out within that month whether or not they picked my talk. And I have heard back from the fine folks over at TEDx Oshkosh. Unfortunately, they did not pick my talk this time around, but I am not discouraged at all. I was a little bit bummed for a minute because I was super duper excited to stand on that red carpet in my own little hometown. I thought that would have been way cool. But there are plenty of other TEDx events all over the area and all over Wisconsin. And I've even been invited to speak at a couple of other different events coming up this year as a result of giving that audition and a result of everybody sharing that video and helping me spread that message. So like I said, a little bit bummed that TEDx Oshkosh didn't pick me, but that's okay. I can still try again next year, and I'll still be spreading my message around the city and around the state. So no worries there, but I will say this, just a little plug to everybody, that since I didn't get picked, the more that us as a group in our community can continue to share that message, if it resonated with you, if you think that somebody that you know might help from that message, or if you agree that we really do have a very serious issue of a lot of people are suffering from mental illness in this country, and we don't have really getting help, and that a lot of these people are winding up in the system and behind bars. If that sounds like an issue to you, help jump on board and let's help spread this message, because I know that one of these days we're gonna make the change. We're gonna be able to make some changes and make a difference. So like I said, rest assured, I'm not discouraged at all. I'm gonna continue chatting about it, and I hope that you all continue to support me in my mission to chat about it and spread that message and keep sharing my message. So one other just quick thing before we get into our topic. This is just my little disclaimer. I like to throw them out there. These conversations are purely my thoughts, my opinions, and my experiences. I am not a professional. I am not a doctor or a therapist or a counselor. So this is not meant to be psychological advice or medical advice. If you feel like you are really struggling with something and you need to work through something and you need to talk to somebody on a professional level, please, please, please reach out to your physician and ask for a referral, or do some research in your area and ask for recommendations. I will tell you that therapy and counseling has been it's been a lifesaver for me. And so there is absolutely no shame in, getting that help that you need. But like I said, I am not a professional. So, like I said, this is really just, I'm hoping to give some advice of my personal experiences, that maybe you can take something away and run with it, or at least even at the end of the day, just know that you're not the only one struggling through something. So that is my disclaimer. All right, so let's get into things. Today's topic, it's in the title, if and when to forgive and forget. And I wanted to talk about this particular topic for two reasons. The first reason being that this is something that I'm really navigating like in full force right now, when and if it's right to forgive and forget. And then the second piece of that is that my page and my mission is geared, really towards adults who have a parent who is incarcerated or have dealt with a parent who is incarcerated. But really, this topic, everybody's been hurt by somebody, and no family is perfect. Maybe you don't have, ex-inmates in your family, but no family is perfect, and I guarantee you that we've all been hurt and may have a grudge that we may need to work through at some point. So I felt like this was a topic that could resonate with more than just our tiny little niche group of people that we have assembled here. So the first point that I really want to stress regarding this topic, forgive and forget, is really, really dissecting the words first and foremost. And I'll get into forgiveness a little bit more in depth as we go through our entire conversation. But forgiveness does not necessarily mean that you are saying, hey, you're forgiven and everything's going to go back hunky-dory the way that it always was. It doesn't even mean forgiveness means you keep them in your life. That does not have to be the definition of forgiveness, okay? So keep that little tidbit in your brain as we kind of go through, and I'll share my experiences and my thoughts and what has helped me. But then that other word, forget. So this is really important for me. And I really, really, really wanted to help it stand out a bit and really make a point on this one. And maybe even my title is slightly misleading when I bring up the context, but I think it is very, very, very important that whatever course you decide, whether you decide you are going to cross that person out forever and they will never be in your life, or if you decide you're going to, only have that person in your life and at the very minimum capacity when you absolutely have to speak to them and be cordial, or maybe you are going to try to, rebuild and rekindle what you can of some sort of relationship with this person. Whatever you decide, I think it is absolutely crucial that you never, ever, ever, ever forget what has happened to you or what you've been through or the harm that has been done to you. Especially if you're in a situation, similar to mine, where that was my parent that harmed me and that put my life and my future at serious risk and caused a lot of damage. And a parent should never do these things to a child. And so it was a parent. It's hard for anybody who is dealing with their parent who is this person who has hurt them to this extent to cross them out entirely. It absolutely can be done, and there are situations where I think that it is necessary. But there are situations too where you have that battle, that internal battle of, but this is my mother, this is my parent, and you still have love for them. And my mother and I, prior to her arrest, when I was 23, we had an amazing relationship. She took me out for my 21st birthday type amazing relationship. And that will never, ever, 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 ever be the same. But even if I decide little by little over the course of the years to let her in a little bit, I can never forget what she did, because the minute that I forget is the minute that I let my guard down. And the minute that I let my guard down is the minute that I'm leaving myself vulnerable to her hurting me again. So that kind of leads me to my next really important point that I have made from the minute that my mother was arrested until today, and I will continue to live this for the rest of my life, is me first, protection and self-protection. So a little bit of my backstory. I know some of you, have caught little tidbits of, the whole story of how we got to this point, but just a little bit of backstory to give some context. even prior, growing up, my mom, pathological liar. She lied about everything, little things, big things. Um, I have a line in that TEDx video audition where I said my mom convinced me that I was allergic to mustard for my entire life, and like deathly allergic to mustard, to the point where if I went into a McDonald's and they accidentally put mustard on my burger and I took a bite out of it, I was thinking that I was going to die in the McDonald's restaurant. And I'm not allergic to mustard. It was a complete lie. She never got to tell me that. But so little lies kind of turned into really big lies. And, when she was arrested, she tried to, nobody wants to go to jail. Nobody wants to get in all that trouble. And so she thought she would be able to pin some of her crimes on me. Thank God that wasn't the case. And it was pretty clear, I had no idea, nothing to do with what she was doing. But, that was, she set out to harm me. And so I kind of had to separate that this is my mother, and I had to I had to protect myself. And so during the time that my mom was in prison, she was in prison for almost 7 years. And during that time, my communication with her was very minimal. I, visited her only a few times. We spoke on the phone, a handful of times. But I even went a number of years in a row consecutively without speaking to her at all. And at that time, it was kind of my way of self-protection. At that time, I actually felt safer. I felt like, my mom was in prison. She couldn't get to me. She couldn't damage my identity, my reputation, my whatever. She couldn't harm me where she was at. And so I kind of put her in this little box, and then I put that box in the back dark cobwebby corner of my brain, and that's kind of where she sat. And I took it out only when I had to. I was very hurt, and I was very confused, and I was learning things that I thought were very different growing up, and learning all these lies. And so my best way of self-protection was to kind of keep her in this box. Well, while she was in prison, I know a lot of my mother was diagnosed with bipolar. And so all of a sudden, and this is kind of leading into my next point a little bit, knowing that she was now diagnosed with a mental illness sort of changed things slightly. It was absolutely no excuse for what she did, but it started to make me question my perspective of things, my perception of things. And I started to have to identify, is she evil and just evil? Or did she do evil things because she is sick? And is there potential for her to get help? Okay. And so that started, like I said, while she was in prison, it was a whole lot easier to kind of just not deal with it right now. But my mom has now been out for over a year. I want to say like a year and a half or so. And so now that she's out, it's I don't no longer have the control of when I open that box. Now, she can kind of pop up like a jack in the box because she's out, and she can call, and she can, she knows where I live. And so there's a little less control now. And now I've had to start really navigating whether or not, when and if it's the right time for us to move forward and for me to forgive. And what does that look like? What does that look like? Does that mean that I'm forgiving and moving forward with her, or am I doing it for and by myself? So I had to kind of start really peeling back the layers and identifying, what do I feel comfortable with at the end of the day? And so that's where things, again, putting myself first, that self-protection, still going into this next piece, I'm always putting myself first. And so I started to really think to myself, it's this golden question: is she evil, or can she be helped? And I started to realize that if I crossed her out completely and I never spoke to her ever again, would I be okay on her last day of life when she is dying? Will I be okay and happy with myself and said I did everything that I could? And that had to, kind of set me back a little bit. And I had to say to myself, well, if I keep her just locked away and I don't ever, I keep her crossed out forever, will I ever really know, is she evil or can she get help? Because if I'm not seeing her, I'm not witnessing her and her rehabilitation and her therapy and her reentry into society, if I'm not witnessing that to any extent whatsoever, how am I really going to know definitively that she couldn't be helped? And that might mean that she's going to disappoint me, right? So I've kind of made this decision. I'm certainly not going to let her get close enough to where she can hurt me financially or my life or get to my family. I'm a pretty strong cookie now, and so she might be able to hurt me and disappoint me on an emotional level. But I've definitely put my protections out there to where she can't get at me and damage my life the way that she once was able to. But that again kind of led me into starting this journey of if it is and when it is right to move on and what that looks like. Now, one of my first things that I had to discover with my mom was her transparency. And so this is kind of my next really important thing that I think everybody has to really take a look at if it is right for you in your situation to move forward with or without. I felt that it was really important for me to have my mother admit and say, yes, I did this, I lied about this, and I know that impacted your life by XYZ, and I needed to hear her say the words, I did this, and I'm sorry because I understand how it impacted you. Without that from her, and we're still working on that piece. We haven't quite moved forward with all of that. There are still little things along the way that she's still holding on, that it didn't happen, or she swears, she doesn't have any recollection of certain things. And maybe that'll be my answer at the end of the day if she's just completely unwilling to acknowledge it. But at this point, that is where we're at, is are you willing to acknowledge it? Because if you're not willing to acknowledge that you did this and take ownership of it and express to me and articulate to me that you understand the impact that it had on me, how can I trust that you'll never do it again, right? So really important piece there. And I'm going to check my notes really fast just to make sure I'm not skipping over anything. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, so the last few months, like I said, my mom's been out for about 1.5 years-ish. In the last few months, we've had Father's Day, and we've had Mother's Day, and we've had Easter and the 4th of July, and so these things have kind of, she has raised her hand and said, hey, do you want to see me for the 4th? Do you want to see me for Mother's Day? Things like that. And so I did decide that I was going to see her for the 4th of July, and so I kind of opened up that box just a little bit. And I'm not going to lie, I felt real uncomfortable to some extent. It was very different. I know that even these tiny steps that I might be taking with my mother, that our relationship will never be what it was. And I've come to terms with that, and I've accepted that. And I think that that's okay. And I think my mother has accepted that as well. But taking that first step, and this kind of brings me to my next point, is taking that first step of opening the box and keeping my guard up and protecting myself, but opening the box, and that first step towards forgiving what happened, not necessarily forgiving my mother, doing it for me. The weight that I felt lifted off my shoulders was really incredible. And I'm not a religious person. I grew up a Catholic. I went to Catholic schools majority of my life, and so I definitely have religion in my blood, but I would not consider myself a religious person. So I don't feel that like forgiveness has to be this religious type of thing. But that like I said, just saying, I don't have to be so mad that this happened to me anymore. I can let go that this happened to me, felt so amazing. So let me kind of go back over here too. Okay. So that kind of does, like, for the most part, kind of wrap things up a little bit, but I'll just recap just a little bit. So the first thing, like I said, don't ever forget what happened, because the minute that you forget and sweep it under the rug and ignore that it happened, the quicker you let your guard down, and then you're vulnerable again, and it can happen again. So don't ever forget, but protect yourself. Always, always. Again, regardless of what path you take, whether you're going to move forward without that person, or you're going to move forward and take tiny steps with that person, or you're going to just move forward and see where it goes, whatever path that you take, that is okay, and that is your prerogative. But make sure that you are putting yourself first 100% of the time, and not for a single second taking that protection down, because the minute you take the protection down is the minute you're vulnerable again, and nobody wants that, right? Don't hold that grudge for so long. Even if, like I said, you're going to decide that you're going to cross them out and they've hurt you so much and they are evil. There are definitely people out there that, sick and crazy and twisted or not, they are also just evil, and those people, keep them out of your life. I think that there's no wrong in that. But don't hang on to the pain for so long, because eventually it will eat away at you. It's okay to decide to walk away, and it's okay to decide that this no longer has to define you anymore. It doesn't have to be your definition. And I always say, and I'm sorry if there's any kids out there, but I always say that sitting in your own shit is real nice. It's comfortable, it's warm, right? But it really starts to stink after a while, and that to me is what holding on to that pain and that grudge. At first, it was comforting, and I knew I had to work through it, and I had to feel the pain, and I had to work through the pain and the hurt and everything else. But once I was able to just let it go and say it happened and it sucked, but I'm fine, I'm okay, and I'm through it, and I'm over it, and I'm okay, and I don't have to be so hurt and so sad about it anymore. The minute that I let that go, oh, it felt so good for me. Leave the other person out of it. And don't forget, like I said, if you do decide that you want to try in tiny steps or whatever capacity to try to build a relationship at any capacity with this person, make sure that they admit to you. Make sure that they acknowledge what they have done to you, because if they cannot take ownership of what they have done and what they have caused for your life and for you, then they cannot be trusted to never do it again. They need to understand and acknowledge what they've done in order to fix it and change it and ensure that it never happens again. So that's what I've got for today. So I hope that you've all been able to take at least a little bit of a tidbit out of my talk today. Like I said, I tried to make it so that, something might be able to apply to pretty much just anybody, instead of just, somebody who might have a parent incarcerated. But please leave your comments, your questions, your opinions, your experiences, your stories. Please leave them in the comments. I love to see them. And even if you don't want to, share it with everybody, feel free to send me a direct message either to my personal page or my personal profile, or to the NACIP page. I'd be happy to chat with anybody on a personal basis as well. And if you have any ideas for topics moving forward, or even you want to share your story, we can invite people on lives now. So if you have ideas, you want to talk about something with me and want to see it on a live, leave those suggestions in the comments too. I'd be happy to try to work it into a schedule sometimes. But like I said, even if you're just going to say hi, let me know that you're there, let me know that you saw the video, let me know where you're watching from. Like I said, I love to see all of your comments from all over the place, and connect with everybody from all over the place. And again, if you got anything out of this video, or you think that somebody that you know might find some help out of this video, share. All of the sharing really helps spread my mission. So thanks again for joining me, and watch for another Facebook Live soon. Bye.